Self-respect is built in private, not in public. Most people think self-respect is something you earn in public. They believe it comes from recognition, praise, status, attention, and validation. They think once people admire them, self-respect will follow. But psychology reveals a very different truth. Self-respect is not built in front of people. It is built when no one is watching. It is built in private moments, in silent decisions, in choices that never get applause. How you wake up when no one is forcing you. How you speak to yourself after failure. How you keep promises that only you know about. How you behave when quitting would be easier. These moments shape your internal standard. And your internal standard always leaks outward. People don't respond to what you say about yourself. They respond to what your behavior signals. This is why some people demand respect loudly, but never receive it. And others never demand it, yet are naturally respected. The difference is not confidence, it is congruence. Congruence means your private behavior matches your public presence. When you disrespect yourself in private, no amount of confidence in public can hide it. Your nervous system communicates it, your tone carries it, your posture leaks it. People feel it before they understand it. This is why seeking validation never creates self-respect. Validation is external, self-respect is internal. When collapse is under pressure, the other stabilizes you. This video is not about motivation, it is about alignment. Because self-respect is not how you act when people are watching. It is how you act when no one is there to judge, praise, or reward you. By the end of this video, you will understand why private discipline matters more than public image. How self-respect is quietly built through small decisions. Why people sense self-respect without being told, and how changing your private behavior automatically changes how people treat you. This is not about becoming loud, or assertive, or dominant. It is about becoming internally consistent. Because once you stop abandoning yourself in private, others stop feeling invited to abandon you in public. Stay with me, because once you understand how self-respect is truly built, you will stop trying to earn it and start embodying it. Why public validation can never create self-respect. Public validation feels powerful. Applause, approval, likes, recognition. It creates a temporary sense of worth. But psychology makes one thing clear. Validation feels good, but it does not create self-respect. Because validation comes from outside, and self-respect must come from within. When your sense of worth depends on public reaction, it becomes unstable. It rises with praise. It collapses with criticism. This instability forces you into performance mode. You start managing perception instead of managing behavior. And behavior is where self-respect is built. People who chase validation often confuse attention with value. But attention is easy to gain, value is not. Anyone can be loud, anyone can impress, anyone can perform confidence. But performance without alignment creates internal conflict. You look strong, but you feel fragile. This fragility leaks, not in obvious ways, but subtle ones. Over-explaining, defensiveness, approval-seeking, fear of disagreement. These are not personality traits, they are signals. Signals of internal dependence. And people respond to signals, not intentions. Another uncomfortable truth. Public validation trains you to outsource self-worth. Instead of asking, did I act with integrity today? You start asking, how was I perceived? Perception becomes the reference point. And when perception leads, self-respect follows or disappears. This is why people who live for validation often feel empty in private. They are respected publicly, but disconnected internally. And this disconnect is exhausting. Another psychological effect of validation dependence is behavioral compromise. You begin adjusting your values to maintain approval. You tolerate things you shouldn't. You say yes when you mean no. You stay quiet when you should speak. Each compromise feels small, but over time they accumulate. And accumulated compromise destroys self-respect. Not dramatically, quietly. This is why people who seek validation often struggle with boundaries. Boundaries threaten approval. Approval feels like safety. So they choose safety over self-respect. But safety built on approval is fragile. The moment approval is withdrawn, identity shakes. Another important realization: public validation rewards image, not character. Image is what people see, character is what you practice. Character is built in repetition, image is built in moments. Moments impress, repetition defines. Self-respect is not impressed by moments. It responds to consistency. Another psychological trap of validation is comparison. When worth comes from public reaction, comparison becomes inevitable. Who gets more attention? Who is praised more? Who is admired more? Comparison corrodes self-respect because it shifts focus from internal standards to external rankings. And rankings never end. There will always be someone louder, more visible, more celebrated. Chasing validation means chasing a moving target. Self-respect requires a fixed one. Another truth most people avoid: validation can coexist with self-respect, but it cannot replace it. The order matters. When self-respect comes first, validation is optional. When validation comes first, self-respect becomes conditional. Conditional self-respect is unstable. It works on good days. It collapses on bad ones. Another critical realization: people who truly respect themselves do not fear losing approval, because approval was never the source. This freedom changes behavior. They speak calmly. They act decisively. They set boundaries without guilt. And people feel this difference immediately. The most important realization of this part is this: public validation can make you visible, but only private integrity makes you solid. Without private integrity, visibility becomes pressure. With private integrity, visibility becomes irrelevant. Self-respect does not ask, "Did they approve of me?" It asks, "Did I abandon myself today?" And that question is never answered in public. The private habits that quietly build self-respect. Self-respect is not built through speeches, affirmations, or confidence in public spaces. It is built through habits. Quiet habits, unseen habits, habits no one claps for. This is the part most people misunderstand. They look for self-respect in big actions, but self-respect grows from small decisions, repeated consistently. The first private habit that builds self-respect is keeping promises to yourself. Not promises made publicly, promises made quietly. Waking up when you said you would, stopping when you said you would, continuing when quitting would be easier. Every broken promise weakens internal trust. Every kept promise strengthens it. And self-respect is built on self-trust. You cannot respect someone you don't trust. That includes yourself. The second private habit is how you speak to yourself. Not motivational quotes, but the internal dialogue that appears after failure. Do you insult yourself? Do you excuse yourself? Do you abandon standards? Or do you respond with accountability without cruelty? Self-respect grows when correction replaces criticism. Harsh self-talk does not build discipline, it builds shame. And shame erodes self-respect. Another critical habit is discipline without audience. Doing the right thing when no one will ever know. Not posting it, not sharing it, not receiving validation. Private discipline creates internal authority. Authority does not come from control over others. It comes from control over impulses. This is why disciplined people rarely need to demand respect. They radiate it. Another habit that builds self-respect is saying no in private first. Before saying no to others, you must stop saying no to yourself. No to rest, no to focus, no to standards. When you consistently ignore your own needs, you teach yourself that your comfort doesn't matter. And people follow that lesson. Private self-abandonment always becomes public disrespect. Another powerful habit is ending the day with integrity, not perfection. Integrity. Did you act in alignment with your values? Did you avoid unnecessary compromise? Did you take responsibility? Self-respect does not require flawless days. It requires honest ones. Another overlooked habit is emotional regulation in private. How you handle frustration when no one is watching determines your emotional maturity. Do you numb, explode, distract? Or do you sit with discomfort without escaping it? Sitting with discomfort builds emotional strength. Emotional strength becomes calm presence. Calm presence becomes respect. Another habit is choosing effort over comfort. Comfort is easy, effort is meaningful. Every time you choose comfort at the cost of your values, self-respect weakens. Every time you choose effort in alignment with your standards, self-respect grows, not dramatically, gradually. Another crucial private habit is walking away mentally. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every comparison deserves energy. Not every impulse deserves action. Mental boundaries are the foundation of external boundaries. If you can't control your inner world, you cannot expect others to respect your outer one. Another realization. Self-respect does not grow when life is easy. It grows in moments of temptation, fatigue, and pressure. How you act in those moments defines your internal identity. And identity shapes behavior. Behavior teaches people how to treat you. The most important realization of this part is this. Self-respect is built in private, because that is where your real standards live. Public behavior is performance. Private behavior is truth. And truth is what your nervous system broadcasts to the world around you. Why self-respect is felt before it is seen. Self-respect does not announce itself. It doesn't introduce itself. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't need proof. It is felt. Before people understand you, before they judge you, before they decide how to treat you, they feel something. That feeling comes from your nervous system. Human beings are constantly reading signals: posture, tone, pace, eye contact, silence. And these signals are not controlled consciously. They are regulated internally. This is why self-respect cannot be faked. You can perform confidence. You can imitate assertiveness. You can memorize strong language. But if your internal state is unstable, your body communicates it anyway. Your voice hesitates, your explanations lengthen, your reactions arrive too quickly. People may not articulate it, but they sense misalignment. Alignment is the key word here. Self-respect is alignment between what you tolerate privately and what you project publicly. When those two match, your presence feels grounded. Grounded presence creates safety. Safety creates trust. Trust creates respect. This happens before logic, before conversation, before analysis. Another critical mechanism is emotional coherence. When you respect yourself, your emotions settle. You are not constantly scanning for approval. You are not bracing for rejection. You are not adjusting mid-sentence. This emotional steadiness is felt immediately. People relax around it. They listen more closely. They respond more carefully. Because calm nervous systems invite regulation in others. Another subtle but powerful factor is boundary energy. You don't need to state boundaries for people to sense them. People sense when your yes is intentional, your no is final, your presence is selective. This sensing happens before a boundary is ever tested. It is why some people are never disrespected, even without confrontation. Their internal line is clear. Another important realization: self-respect changes timing. People who lack self-respect often rush. They respond too fast. They explain too much. They overcorrect immediately. This urgency signals fear of loss. Fear collapses authority. Self-respect slows you down. You pause, you choose, you respond instead of react. This change in timing is deeply felt by others. It signals that you are not operating from need. Need repels respect. Stability attracts it. Another key psychological signal is absence of performance. When you respect yourself, you stop performing. You don't try to be impressive. You don't try to be liked. You don't try to be understood. Instantly. Performance creates tension. Authenticity creates ease. Ease is read as confidence. Another truth most people miss: people don't treat you based on what you demand. They treat you based on what your nervous system allows. If your internal system tolerates disrespect, your external world will reflect it. If your internal system rejects misalignment, people adjust automatically. This is why self-respect must be built privately, because the private self is the one broadcasting signals. Public behavior is surface, private regulation is source. Another realization: self-respect is contagious. When someone enters a room with internal alignment, others unconsciously adjust. They lower their voice, they become more deliberate, they check themselves. Not because they fear you, but because your presence is regulated. Regulation is powerful. The most important realization of this part is this: self-respect is not something people notice. It is something they respond to, and they respond to it before they ever know why. That is why self-respect must be built where signals originate. In private, in silence, in consistency. How private self-discipline becomes public authority. Authority is often misunderstood. Most people think authority comes from position, from title, from power granted by others. But real authority begins much earlier, long before anyone recognizes it. It begins with self-discipline, practiced in private. Self-discipline is not restriction, it is alignment. It is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when comfort argues otherwise. When you practice discipline privately, you build something invisible but powerful, internal authority. Internal authority changes how you move. You stop negotiating with impulses. You stop bargaining with excuses. You stop outsourcing responsibility. And this internal firmness quietly reshapes your external behavior. People notice consistency. They notice when your values don't change under pressure. Your standards don't fluctuate. Consistency signals reliability. Reliability signals leadership. This is how discipline turns into authority without announcement. Another critical mechanism is decision integrity. Disciplined people make fewer decisions, but stand by them longer. They don't constantly revise, explain, or justify. This decisiveness is felt as strength, not dominance, not control, but grounded certainty. People trust those who trust their own decisions. Another important effect of private discipline is emotional containment. When you discipline your reactions privately, you don't leak emotion publicly. You don't overreact, you don't overshare, you don't escalate unnecessarily. This calm containment creates a perception of composure. Composure is one of the strongest forms of authority. People instinctively defer to the most composed person in the room. Not because they are loud, but because they are stable. Another subtle shift happens in how others speak to you. When your discipline is visible through behavior, people choose words more carefully, become more respectful in tone. Avoid casual disrespect, not because you demanded it, but because your presence sets a standard. Standards are contagious. People adjust to them. Another important truth: private discipline reduces your need for control. You no longer try to manage others, you manage yourself. This self-management removes desperation from interactions. Desperation invites dominance. Self-management invites respect. Another psychological link between discipline and authority is delayed gratification. Disciplined people are comfortable waiting. They don't rush outcomes. They don't force responses. They don't chase validation. Waiting signals abundance. Abundance signals power. Those who rush appear needy. Those who wait appear confident. Another effect of discipline is predictable boundaries. People know what you will tolerate, what you won't engage with, what is non-negotiable. Predictability removes testing. When people stop testing, authority stabilizes. Another important realization: public authority is not something you claim, it is something others assign. And they assign it based on how you handle yourself when no one is watching. Private discipline shapes posture, pace, tone, reaction time. These details create perception. Perception becomes reputation. Reputation becomes authority. Another truth most people miss: discipline makes you boring to manipulate. You don't react impulsively. You don't need instant approval. You don't break under pressure. Manipulation fails where discipline exists, and people respect what they cannot easily move. The most important realization of this part is this: authority is not built by controlling others. It is built by controlling yourself. When no one is watching, that control doesn't stay hidden. It shows up in your presence, in your decisions, in your boundaries. And when it does, people respond, not because you asked them to, but because your behavior made it natural. Why people with self-respect rarely need to defend themselves. People who lack self-respect are constantly defending themselves. They explain, they justify, they clarify, they argue, not because they are wrong, but because they are uncertain internally. Self-respect changes this completely. When you respect yourself, you no longer feel the need to convince others of your worth, because worth is no longer up for debate. Defensiveness is not strength, it is a signal. a signal that approval is still needed, a signal that perception still controls identity. Self-respect removes this dependence. Another uncomfortable truth: defending yourself too often invites questioning. When you rush to defend, you subconsciously tell people, this accusation matters. And what matters gets explored. People push further, they probe, they test. Not out of cruelty, but because your reaction opened the door. Self-respecting individuals close this door quietly. They do not deny unnecessarily. They do not overcorrect. They do not emotionally respond to every misunderstanding. They understand something crucial. Not every opinion deserves a response. Silence is often a stronger answer than explanation. Another key psychological shift is internal validation. When you validate yourself privately, external validation loses urgency. You don't need to prove. You don't need to correct. You don't need to win arguments. You choose clarity over conflict. This choice changes how people treat you, because people mirror your certainty. When you are uncertain, they question. When you are grounded, they adjust. Another reason self-respecting people rarely defend themselves is selective engagement. They don't respond to tone, they respond to substance. They ignore emotional bait, they address real issues calmly. This selectivity signals intelligence. It tells others this person knows what matters. Another subtle but powerful reason: self-respect changes reaction time. People who feel attacked often respond immediately. Urgency signals insecurity. Self-respecting individuals pause. They think. They decide if a response is necessary. This pause communicates confidence. Confidence reduces aggression in others. Another important realization: defensiveness keeps you emotionally tied to the person questioning you. Non-defensiveness creates distance. Distance restores power. This is why manipulative individuals struggle with self-respecting people. They cannot provoke reaction. They cannot create guilt. They cannot force explanation. Without reaction, manipulation collapses. Another truth most people miss: self-respecting people do defend themselves, but rarely and precisely. When they do speak, it is brief, clear, final. No emotion, no debate, no escalation. This precision ends the conversation. Another psychological effect: people stop challenging those who don't reward challenge. Challenges are attempts to gain leverage. When no leverage appears, challenges stop. This is why self-respecting people appear unbothered. Not because they don't care, but because they don't outsource control. Another realization: defending yourself too much keeps you stuck in reaction mode. Self-respect moves you into position mode. You no longer play the game, you decide whether to participate. This shift is deeply felt by others. They sense this person cannot be pulled easily, and people respect what they cannot easily move. The most important realization of this part is this: when you truly respect yourself, you don't need to defend your value, you simply stop negotiating it. Once negotiation ends, so does disrespect. How private self-respect reshapes your boundaries. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Most people think boundaries are rules you announce, statements you explain, lines you draw with words. But psychology reveals a deeper truth. The strongest boundaries are not spoken. They are felt, and they are shaped in private. When you build self-respect privately, your boundaries change automatically. Not because you decided to be stricter, but because your tolerance shifted. You no longer endure what drains you. You no longer engage with what disrespects you. You no longer negotiate what violates your values. This shift is subtle but powerful. Private self-respect teaches you what feels wrong immediately. You sense misalignment faster. You disengage earlier. You don't wait for proof. This early response prevents escalation. Another critical change happens in how you say no. Before self-respect, no feels heavy. It feels guilty. It feels defensive. After self-respect, no feels neutral. It is not an argument. It is not a rejection. It is information. This neutrality removes friction. People are far less likely to push against calm certainty than emotional explanation. Another important psychological effect: your boundaries stop feeling personal. When self-respect is weak, every boundary feels like a confrontation. When self-respect is strong, boundaries feel like maintenance. You are not protecting ego, you are protecting alignment. This internal shift changes everything. Another subtle but powerful change is consistency. Private self-respect creates predictable boundaries. You don't enforce them one day and abandon them the next. You don't bend them for comfort. You don't drop them for approval. Consistency builds credibility. People learn quickly what is allowed and what is not, and learning reduces conflict. Another important realization: boundaries backed by self-respect do not require enforcement. They are enforced by withdrawal. When something crosses your line, you don't argue, you don't threaten, you reduce access. Reduction teaches faster than confrontation. Another psychological shift: you stop explaining boundaries to people who repeatedly ignore them. Explanation invites negotiation. Negotiation invites disrespect. Self-respect removes the need to convince. Your behavior becomes the boundary. Another truth most people avoid: private self-respect raises your standards, not just for others, but for yourself. You stop overgiving, you stop oversharing, you stop overextending. These internal boundaries create external clarity. People feel the change, even if you never mention it. Another powerful effect: your boundaries stop creating guilt. Guilt thrives on internal doubt. When self-respect is solid, guilt has no anchor. You understand that protecting yourself does not harm others. It simply clarifies access. Another realization: people who resist your boundaries are revealing dependence, not disagreement. Healthy people adapt, unhealthy people escalate. This distinction becomes clear when self-respect is present, and clarity simplifies decisions. The most important realization of this part is this: boundaries don't come from courage. They come from self-respect practiced in private. Once self-respect is internalized, boundaries become natural, calm, and non-negotiable, and people adjust accordingly. Why self-respect changes the people you attract. Attraction is not random. People don't enter your life by accident. They enter because something in you signals compatibility. That signal is not what you say, it is how you live. And self-respect changes that signal at the source. When self-respect is weak, you attract people who test limits. People who overstep, take more than they give, create emotional chaos, depend instead of relate. Not because you deserve it, but because your tolerance allows it. Tolerance is an invitation. When you accept disrespect quietly, you attract more of it. But when self-respect is built privately, that invitation disappears. Your energy changes, your pace changes, your availability changes, and people feel it. Another critical psychological principle here is compatibility of regulation. People are drawn to nervous systems similar to their own. When you lack self-respect, your system is often reactive. You overgive, you over-explain, you over-adjust. This attracts people who rely on that imbalance. But when self-respect is strong, your system becomes regulated. Calm, bounded, intentional. And suddenly, dysregulated people feel uncomfortable around you. Not because you rejected them, but because the dynamic no longer works. Another important shift: you stop attracting projects and start attracting partners. Projects need fixing, partners bring balance. Self-respect removes the urge to rescue. And without rescue energy, rescue seekers lose interest. This is not loss, it is filtration. Another subtle but powerful change is effort symmetry. When you respect yourself, you stop over-investing early. You don't rush intimacy. You don't force closeness. You don't chase connection. This allows effort to reveal itself. Those who invest stay. Those who expect free access leave. Another truth most people miss: self-respect repels manipulation before it begins. Manipulators look for insecurity, urgency, and emotional availability. Self-respect removes all three. Your calm pace frustrates them, your clarity exposes them, your boundaries block them, so they move on. And that is protection. Another important effect: you begin attracting people who are comfortable with independence, people who don't need constant reassurance, people who respect space, people who communicate clearly. These relationships feel quieter, but healthier. Less intensity, more stability. And stability is where trust grows. Another psychological shift: you stop trying to be chosen. When self-respect is internal, selection becomes mutual. You observe, you decide, you don't perform. This changes power dynamics immediately. People sense this person is not chasing approval. and non-chasing energy is deeply attractive. Another realization: some people will leave when your self-respect grows. Not because you changed for the worse, but because the old dynamic ended. They were attached to who you were before boundaries, not who you are now. This loss can feel painful, but it is also clarity. You lose access-based connections and gain alignment-based ones. Another truth: self-respect does not guarantee that everyone will like you. It guarantees that the right people stay, and the right people don't require self-abandonment. The most important realization of this part is this: you don't attract what you want. You attract what you tolerate. When tolerance changes, attraction follows. And when attraction changes, your entire relational world reorganizes. Quietly, naturally, without force. The loneliness phase, when self-respect grows before life adjusts. There is a phase no one warns you about. A quiet phase, an empty phase, a confusing phase. It begins right after self-respect starts to solidify, but before your life fully adjusts to it. This phase feels like loneliness, not because you are unloved, but because old dynamics are dissolving faster than new ones can form. When self-respect grows, certain connections fall away naturally. You stop overgiving, you stop chasing, you stop tolerating, and suddenly the noise disappears. The messages slow down, the invitations decrease, the emotional demands fade. This silence can feel unsettling, because for a long time busyness felt like connection, but busyness was often just access. And access is not intimacy. This is the first lesson of the loneliness phase. Silence does not mean loss. It means recalibration. Your nervous system is adjusting to a new standard. Before, you were constantly stimulated. Now you are regulated. Regulation feels unfamiliar at first. The mind confuses unfamiliar calm with emptiness. But emptiness is not what this is. It is space. And space is required for anything aligned to enter. Another difficult realization in this phase: you may start questioning yourself. Was I too strict? Did I push people away? Did I change too much? These doubts are normal. They are not signs of failure. They are signs of transition. Your old identity is fading. Your new one is not fully integrated yet. This gap feels uncomfortable, but it is temporary. Another important truth: people who were attracted to convenience leave quickly. People who are capable of alignment take time to approach, because alignment moves slowly. It does not rush, it does not force, it does not demand. This delay is often mistaken for rejection, but it is not. It is filtering in progress. Another psychological shift during the loneliness phase is self-observation. Without constant external input, you begin to hear yourself. Your thoughts, your needs, your limits. This can feel intense at first, because many people use relationships to avoid self-awareness. When that distraction is gone, self-awareness becomes unavoidable. But self-awareness is where self-respect deepens. Another realization: the loneliness phase teaches you to enjoy your own company without escaping it. Not through numbing, not through distraction, but through presence. Presence with yourself is the final test of self-respect. If you can sit with yourself without abandoning standards, without seeking validation, without rushing connection, you have crossed a critical threshold. Another truth most people don't talk about: some people panic during this phase and revert. They lower standards, they reopen access, they chase familiarity, and familiarity returns, along with exhaustion. But those who stay consistent experience something different: clarity. The silence begins to feel peaceful. The space begins to feel protective. The loneliness transforms into solitude. And solitude is not emptiness. It is stability without noise. Another powerful shift happens here. You stop equating worth with attention. You stop measuring yourself by messages, responses, or reactions. You begin measuring yourself by alignment. This internal shift prepares you for healthier connections. Connections that don't drain, connections that don't demand, connections that don't require self-betrayal. The most important realization of this part is this: the loneliness phase is not punishment. It is proof that your standards are real. It is the pause between who you were and who you are becoming. And if you respect yourself enough to remain steady here, what comes next will not require explanation. living from private self-respect, not public approval. At some point, the shift becomes permanent. You stop asking, "How do I look?" And you start asking, "Am I aligned?" This is the moment self-respect stops being an idea and becomes a way of living. You no longer move to be seen, you move to be honest with yourself. And honesty creates stability. When your self-respect is built privately, public approval loses its power over you. Praise no longer inflates you, criticism no longer defines you. Because your reference point is no longer external, it is internal. This internal reference changes how you walk through life. You choose differently, you speak more carefully, you disengage faster from what doesn't fit. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Clarity is quiet, but it is firm. Another important shift happens here. You stop explaining your growth. You realize that people who need explanations are often attached to the old version of you. The new version does not require permission. You let behavior speak. Because behavior, repeated consistently, is the clearest language there is. Another truth becomes obvious. You don't need to prove self-respect, you need to protect it. Protection looks like choosing rest without guilt, saying no without justification, walking away without drama, staying silent when noise invites reaction. These are not acts of withdrawal, they are acts of alignment. Another realization. Living from private self-respect simplifies life. You spend less time managing perceptions and more time managing standards. Less confusion, less resentment, less exhaustion. Because you are no longer divided between who you are in private and who you pretend to be in public. Division drains energy. Alignment restores it. Another subtle but powerful change. People begin treating you differently without you asking them to. Not because you demanded respect, but because your behavior no longer invites disrespect. Your presence feels settled, your boundaries feel clear, your reactions feel measured, and people adjust. Some quietly, some immediately, some by leaving. All outcomes are correct. Because self-respect is not about being liked, it is about being whole. Another final truth. When self-respect is built privately, confidence becomes calm. Not loud, not performative, not defensive, just calm. And calm is magnetic. Calm people are trusted. Calm people are listened to. Calm people are respected. Not because they control others, but because they control themselves. This is the final lesson. Self-respect is not something you show. It is something you live. It is built in mornings no one sees, in choices no one applauds, in standards no one negotiates. And once it is built, the world does not need to be convinced. It responds.